Before we go into acid and bases, let's review a few topics that are going to be important in this unit. First is ion. Anything that has an atom or a molecule that gains or loses an electron has a charge. So a charged atom or molecule is an ion. Remember, when we had a sodium atom that came from the left side of the periodic table, so that's a metal, it's going to lose an electron and have a positive charge because it lost something negative. So it becomes a sodium ion. A chlorine atom is from the right side of the periodic table, and it has gained an electron, so it has a negative charge because it gained the negative particle. When you take the sodium atom and the chlorine atom, and the sodium gives one electron to that chlorine, they're going to form two ions that are going to have an electrostatic attraction, which is kind of like a positive negative or a magnetic attraction. And we call that an ionic compound, which is also a salt. So salts are ionic. Ionic compounds are salts. We will be identifying acids, bases, and salts. So it's important to remember that if it is not an acid and it is not a base, then it's a salt. When you put salts in water, they dissociate and they conduct electricity. We call this an electrolyte. Just like those Gatorades, it helps move different things throughout your body and the potassium pumps, etc., like we talked about before. Also, you'll need to know how to name acid and bases and salts. So acids are anything that starts with an H. Remember, if you have just an hydrogen plus an element, you name it hydro-blank-ic acid. So for example, if you had hydrochloric acid, you had hydrogen and you had chlorine, you drop the last syllable and you change it to ic, you add the hydro and you get hydrochloric acid. If it has a polyatomic ion, remember I ate it and it tastes ick. I didn't like the way it tasted. So you change the ending from ate to ick and you add the word acid. So for example, acetate becomes acidic acid. Anything that ends in ite, you change to ous, acid. So remember that Sprite is delicious, ite to ous. Also, you can remember hydraulics for binary when you just have an element. Again, ionics are salts, so that's where you have the metal plus the nonmetal. So you just name the metal, and then you name the nonmetal, drop the last syllable, and add "ide." Remember, if you have a transition metal, you're going to have to add that Roman numeral to show the charge. That's anything in the middle of the periodic table. Also, you need to know the staircase elements, the ones that make that staircase. You have silver, the Ag+, and then you have the two that are stacked on top of each other, cadmium and zinc. They both have a 2+, and then you have that third top stair, which is aluminum, and has a 3+ charge. Bases are just salts. They act the same. So bases are not salts. We just said that. But bases are going to be named just like salts. So you just name the metal, name the nonmetal, drop the last syllable, and add "ide." The last little bit that we have is looking at how to make formulas. So remember, we had the crisscross method. So when you have the positive charge, for example, as you see right here, you have the 3+ charge. It's going to go to the opposite down on the bottom, think absolute value, and the 2-, think absolute value, becomes the 2. So aluminum has a 3+ charge, oxygen has the 2-. Remember, we know those charges from the periodic table, and then you were able to get this formula. And so I put 3 common examples that people tend to ask questions on. So take a look at this screen and make sure to let me know if you have any questions. Finally, we want to remember what the structure of hydrogen looks like. Hydrogen is going to be very important in this unit because we're going to be tracking which is giving the hydrogen and which is accepting it. So here we have hydrogen. Hydrogen has 1 proton and 1 electron. It has a mass, atomic mass of 1 about. So 1 minus 1 is 0. So it has no neutrons. And so it just has that 1 proton in its nucleus and then 1 electron traveling around it. If this electron is given off, then it has a positive charge and all it has is a proton. So an ion of hydrogen is the same as a proton if it's a positive cation. Remember, hydrogen also has the properties to act as a metal and a nonmetal, and we'll see a little bit more of that when we look at the different types of theories and definitions of acid and bases. Lastly, we'll have to remember that concentration, the unit that we just covered, is found in brackets. So if you see a number that's in brackets, that means that's the concentration measured in molarity. And molarity is going to be your moles of solute over liters of solution.